Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. Believe it or not, Ramadan is already halfway over. I cannot believe that. Firstly, I wanted to thank you guys so much for the feedback I got from the last video. You guys really liked it, and even though it was a vulnerable topic for me to talk about, and it was content that I was a bit ambivalent to share about, you guys really did enjoy it, and I really appreciate that. That being said, I actually made this video today in response to a suggestion from one of my friends. Personally messaged me and was like, hey bro, I really appreciated the video. However, there was this particular section that you were talking about regarding the college story, or more specifically when I had a college class at Hunter College at 59th Street and Lexington Avenue in Manhattan, New York City. Basically, during the class, I would excuse myself and pray, and under the pretense that this was I had to go to the bathroom. And he said like, hey bro, I would really appreciate if you talked more about the story and talked about the complexities you might have faced, challenges you might have had, emotions you might have felt, and so on. And upon some self-reflection, I realized that this brother was right. This was a story that deserves to be fleshed out, and it was one that I did not really cover in great detail. Though it is a bit of an anomaly in and of itself, or it's a bit abnormal, it is a story that I think you guys can learn much from, and it also is a story that can show some more insight about my journey. Or without further ado, let's just jump straight into it, guys. So where does the story begin? This was back in August of 2016, so this meant that at the time I was a rising junior in high school. This is also a time where college applications starts to get looked at very seriously. This is the year where you have to do stuff right, and you have to get your resume and transcript looking good. Okay, I'm ready to take some college classes besides the AP credits I would be taking at high school. And at the time, Hunter College is a CUNY college located at 59th Street and Lexington Avenue in Manhattan, New York City. And basically, I heard from a friend that they were having a college fair where they would talk about the different courses they were offering. If you were to be accepted, they would have a bit of an orientation. And I was like, okay, why not? Let me look into it. So one day, I took some time to explore Hunter a bit and just see, okay, what are the courses they have. Hey, this is my first technical college class, so I want to take something that's not too hard. It could be any subject, I'm not particularly picky. However, I was like, okay, I want something that's not too hard, but something that will show me what college life is, or like the college course load is. And eventually, I settled on sociology. And the story about that was basically I was in a booth and I was looking around, and then I just saw that sociology banner. It's something I always had an affinity towards, and it was something that I was always interested in. So I was like, you know what, without a doubt, let me just jump into it. I talked to the representative, and before I knew it, I signed some papers and I was enrolled. 2 weeks later, I got the confirmation email that, hey, I was accepted in the class. It's a go, we can start. And then 2 weeks later, by the end of August, I started the class. Basically, when I did start the class, it was me and 30 other individuals from New York City's 5 different boroughs. These were teenagers from different high schools. Like, we didn't know anyone in the class. We came from different high schools, and I'm sure most of us were just like, okay, we're just here to get the credit, we're just here to do the work, so on and so on. Someone who is introverted or as shy as I am, this was a perfect opportunity for me. I was like, okay, I'm set. This is perfect. I am ready to go with this. For first weeks, because again, it is summer, and keep in mind, in the summer, days are longer, I didn't really have much of an issue when it came to praying, because for instance, Dhuhr, or the second prayer of the day, would be at 1 o'clock, and then Asr prayer would be at like 6:30, or the third prayer of the day would be at 6:30. It'd be like a 5.5 hours later. So this was more than enough time for me to just do what I had to do in between, but also focus on the prayers. However, when it gets closer to winter, the days become shorter. So coincidentally enough, the days get shorter, the prayers also become closer and closer together. It was once a 5.5 hour gap, now it becomes a mere hour and a half gap. So like, it wouldn't be surprising if you have to do Dhuhr prayer at 2 o'clock and then Asr literally comes 2.5 hours later. But at that point, it was the summertime, everything was fine. So I came into this class with my notebook and I was like, okay, I'm ready to work. The teacher was, for the sake of her own privacy and respect, I will not mention her name, but we're gonna call her Karen. Sir Karen was basically someone who was a bit blunt. Clear that this was a professor who did not want any excuses. She was either like, it's my way or the highway. He had some very rigid standards, and this is not necessarily a bad thing. Like, the standards weren't tough or like harsh by any means, but she was someone who had a clear outline on what she wanted to do, and she was like, okay class, you either gotta do it this way or we're gonna have issues. She was someone who was a bit like a hot-headed like person. I would say the closest analogy I could give to give some type of visual representation here is like a bit of a punk. But she was nice and she was professional and she knew what she was talking about. Basically, as she later revealed to us as a whole, she was doing this as one of her side gigs, more or less. Anyways, so for the first 2 months, everything was fine. Class was from like, I believe 4:30 to 5:45, so an hour and 15 minutes. In the class, we would just do the work. It was mostly a discussion-based class, so we'd have sociological discussions, like for instance, like redlining and reverse redlining. In case if you guys don't know, that actually means how like African Americans and other minorities are specifically targeted and ostracized by banks to make sure they don't get like houses or credit scores that they need compared to like their white, richer counterparts. But again, this is a topic I digress from. Anyways, so we were in class and we would just have these discussions and then we would do worksheets. And just like I did in high school, I would use this guise that, oh hey, I have to use the bathroom. In case you guys didn't watch the last video, which I highly recommend, whenever I would pray, because I was a very shy, introverted kid and I just didn't want people to think of me any differently, I would just excuse myself by saying, oh hey, I have to use the bathroom. For the first month and the first 2 months, there wasn't really an issue with this, and there was a couple of reasons why. One was definitely the timing of it. So again, as I mentioned before, summer has longer days. This class conflicted with Osir, or the third prayer, later on in its session. In the first half of it, basically, because Osir was like at 6 o'clock and the class finished at like 5:45, as I said, even when the time began to conflict, it was by the end of class, so I was there for the beginning and middle of it. And basically by the end of class, it was just like, okay, like, yeah, just do what you gotta do. It doesn't really matter. The teacher will tell you the most important content comes in the middle. The first 10 and last 10 minutes are crucial, but mainly if you're not there for the middle and you're not learning anything from what's going on in between like the 50 and 60 minutes, you just wasted your time. For the first 2 months, I didn't really have an issue. I would just excuse myself, go to the bathroom, and I would try not to exploit the situation. What do I mean by this? I would go to the bathroom, try to cleanse myself as fast as I possibly could. Keep in mind, I also have to wash my hands, face, hair, and feet. But I also have to do that, and then I had to go find a staircase where I could pray. Usually I would either have a prayer rug, or I would use something like a coat to just have a clean surface to pray on. The cracks began showing around the end of September, October, and again, the other reason why is also because of timing. When the days started getting shorter and shorter, and that's when there started to become a time conflict between the prayers and the classroom. Osir prayer, which was once at 6 o'clock, a good 15 minutes after class ended, was now at 5:45. Now it was at 5:30. Now it was at 5:25. And each day it goes back a minute because the day gets shorter and shorter. Most people would have been like, hey, Mehdi, like, listen, bro, I understand you have a very noble cause, you have very good intentions. However, this might be better to just save for later. Instead of praying Osir while in college, why don't you go home to the comforts of your home? You have your own bathroom, your own prayer rug, your family understands. Why don't you just pray then? Just do what you gotta do then. It's okay, you're delaying an hour or two, bro. It's not the biggest thing in the world. And these were some of the comments I would get, or like some of the feedback I would get from some of my friends. In a logical sense, this all made complete sense because, of course, for most people, they'd be like, hey, if this is presenting a burden to you, and this is going on for a while, why not take steps to mitigate it? And definitely with hindsight, I definitely understand where that perspective was coming from. It was very legitimate, and maybe it should have been the thing I was doing, who knows? However, it was a commitment that I was serious to make it, and I did not want to take any shortcuts. As most people can attribute to in life, if you take shortcuts or the easy way out, the drawbacks or the detriments of that will show themselves sooner or later. And maybe it wasn't necessarily so for this case, because again, as I mentioned before, it was a bit abnormal in terms of like the Muslim American kind of story, but it was something I was ready to fully commit my heart to, and I was like, okay, let's do this thing. The prayer was during the middle of the class where the heart of the content was basically being discussed by the teacher. I would still use this excuse like, hey, I need to go to the bathroom. Because after interacting with this professor, I realized at least in my head, I made this conclusion that there really was no point talking to her about it. But basically, I would start saying like, hey, I have to go to the bathroom. It did not take long before she would start showing facial expressions, because like, you know, a picture says 1,000 words and her face is not a picture, but you get my point. She was like, hey, why do you have to go to the bathroom? Like, just one time where after like a couple of weeks, she pulled me aside. She was like, hey, listen, like, I understand this is a commuter college, especially in the time when we're teaching. It's rush hour, most people are trying to get in and out. However, I noticed that you're using the bathroom for like 10, 15, even 20 minutes. Is there something going on? And I was just someone like, I am not ready to share. That's definitely not with this woman. I am not telling her anything. So I was just like, no, miss, like, I just hope you understand, like, the lines are very long. It takes a lot of time to get in and out. I just hope you understand that's a situation I have to deal with. I try to make the best out of it, and I'm not trying to exploit your time, but unfortunately, kind of is what it is. It is what it is. Going from a professor's, like, perspective, it looks very sus or very just suspicious when someone takes that much time and they're doing it in the middle of the class. Because in the beginning or the end of the class, like, okay, in the beginning, I understand you just came back from somewhere else. If you need 5 minutes to yourself, go for it. If it's the end, like, okay, yeah, the class is basically over. In the middle of it, it's like, no. Because, however, very fortunate at the time because this professor was occupied with something else. As kids who were coming back from our already daunting curriculum at our normal high schools, we were just like, listen, like, we're just trying to get extra points in this class. We just want to pass and finesse the class. Again, my New Yorkers will know what's up with this slang terminology. We started asking her, hey, like, professor, we know it's like, you might have graded this assignment. We were basically telling her this. We were just like, oh, you might have graded this assignment a little harshly. We were wondering, is there any possible way we could get points back or just maybe you could grade the assignments a bit more leniently. We didn't say it like that, but it was basically just like we basically showed her like we wanted extra points. Who was basically my way or the highway. It did not take long before she got irritated by our request, and she was basically like, listen, like I have a syllabus, this is how the grading scale works, we're all gonna follow it, rather than ostracizing me for my bathroom excuse. Basically, she was too focused about the class and kind of how the class wasn't going exactly the way she wanted it to. She was also someone who was very real. She was like the real one, and she was basically very honest. There was a day where she actually got really mad at the class, and she was like, listen, like I hope you understand this is my situation. I understand your situation is that you're coming from your high schools and that you guys just want to finish the class on time. Please, let's respect each other and let's do this to the best of our abilities. The teacher was a bit more blunt and harsh than this, but that was basically her gist. Just wanted to be in and out. Very New Yorker mindset. We go in, we do XYZ thing. We go out, we're hustling and bustling. That's just the mentality most of us have. So I was more than happy to welcome this change. However, to provide a timeline for you guys, from August to the beginning of October, everything's fine. The prayer does not conflict with the class. Beginning of October, mid-October, that's where there's some conflict, but because it's still at the end of the class, I didn't really have much of a problem. I would just excuse myself, say, sorry, I have to go, I have another event, and she would take that. Then November began. Then that was when the bathroom excuse started getting a little sus and a little suspicious. Middle of November, that was what happened, and it started becoming obvious that like, hey, this guy's taking a long time. Guys, keep in mind this is a commuter school, so again, rush hour, really crowded out bathrooms. The staircase is really crowded. As someone who's also not organized, and this is my fault for sure, I was not someone who was like, okay, this is my experience on Monday. It took me 10 minutes to do what I had to do in the bathroom. And it took me 5 minutes to find a staircase where I could pray in quickly and efficiently. What can I do next time? I was just not that type of person. I don't know if that was just a teenager in me or that's just Medi being Medi, but I was not the type of person to journal this out and be like, okay, this is what happened, what can I do next time? Rather, I'm a bit more of a spontaneous dude, and that comes with both its benefits and its drawbacks as well. But that was basically the case. Every day I was kind of just doing it spontaneously. I was just rolling with the punches. I was like, okay, today, this particularly unique circumstances, this is what I'm gonna have to work with. Like, why don't you just tell her your situation? A bigger part of my voice was just saying like, listen, like that's not an option. She's not going to understand. Like, tell her you're praying in the staircase. Are you kidding me? Normal people would look at you strange. Imagine this hot-headed woman. Are you kidding me, Betty? You're not doing that. And that was kind of the decision I made, and that was something I stuck with. And I think, unfortunately, this was just building up. This was kind of like a bottle, and this was slowly just building up until it exploded. Day of explosion was during the final. I studied the study guide, scrutinized it, probably not as much as I should have, but I did know enough that I was confident, like, okay, I could take this exam. So on the day of the exam, you know, as someone who's a test taker, I'm sure most of my viewers out here are also test takers, you know, your hands are sweaty, your eyes are like, whoo, like your heartbeat's going by really fast, like things are going on. I in the classroom, and then we were basically ready to take the exam. And after those daunting 10 minutes, eventually we got the exam, and I just started it. So at the first 30 minutes of the exam, all my test takers can admit here, basically you go through the test, you're like, okay, is this hard? Is this easy? Is it medium? Unfortunately, in my case, the test was medium. It wasn't too hard, but it wasn't too easy either. It's not like Orgo where you could spend 3 weeks studying for it and still fail. And I am not speaking out of personal experience for that. But anyways, so I took the exam for the first 30 minutes. Everything was going fine. I was pacing myself, doing the questions. I believe it was around a 55 questionnaire sheet, but look at the time. First it was 4:15. I was like, all right, whatever. The second time I looked, it was 4:28. It's one of those moments where time just stops and slows down, and you realize you have a decision to make. What was this decision? I realized that Asr was the prayer at 4:28. How did I notice? So basically, every day I would have my app on my phone and look at the times of the prayers, and more or less, as soon as I saw the times, they just stuck in my head, and I memorized them. And I knew at 4:28 was the third prayer. Of course, especially now, in this moment, my homeboy Andre is in my head saying, listen, Mehdi, today you can take the L. To finish your exam, wait until the end of the exam time. You do not have to do this right now. Please make your life easy just for this one test. As someone who was very committed to this, I was very ready to try to work with what I have to the best of my abilities. I knew I had a decision to make. I was like, okay, I need to do this. I asked the teacher again, like, hey, can I use the bathroom, please? Guys, I should have told you. You should have seen her face when I asked that. Her face was just like, dude, you already had this discussion. You've done this throughout the semester. You basically abused this. Again, guys, I don't blame her for her perspective. As someone who did not tell her this at all I looked like was just a kid who did not want to be in that class. That's already irritated enough from a professor's perspective. Basically, like, bro, like, come on, not on the final. At least not on the final. Why now? It was a decision I knew I had to make. So I was like, please, like, I really need to go. I will be very quick about it. After much reluctance, she was just like, okay, just go. I don't have time to focus on this right now. So I left the classroom, and Unfortunately for my luck, I would not be quick because that day was particularly a heavy day in terms of commute. Bathrooms were huge, and normally for bathrooms it would take me 5 minutes to like 8 minutes on a good day or like a normal day. Bathroom lines were huge, and that alone I think took almost 15 minutes for me to just go to the sink and just do what I had to do. Then I had to rush to the staircase. Like, listen, like, I don't care if people see me today, just do what you gotta do. When I finished the prayer and I was rushing back, I had that gut/instinctual feeling that I messed up. Sure, all of us can relate here, but basically it's like feeling like, damn, I know something bad's gonna happen. Like, I think I messed up. I really don't think this is gonna go out well. And surprise, surprise, when I turned the doorknob and I entered the classroom, the first thing this teacher was like, Mehdi Mustafa, you took 20 minutes. Not 5, not 10, not 15. You took 20 minutes to go to the bathroom. Professor, you don't understand. Like, please, I really don't understand. Point, dealing with her, dealing with all those issues she had earlier in the classroom and just other things that I'm sure she had as well. And keep in mind, this is the final exam too. She was basically like, no, like, that's it. Like, I'm not accepting any more excuses. I'm not accepting any more, excuse me for the language here, bullshit. She was like, okay, like, you have to explain yourself right now. And for me, there was a million thoughts going on through my head, but my mouth just could not say it. It's like, you know what? You're just gonna fail this exam. You're gonna go back, you're gonna sit there, and you're gonna take the exam knowing you're failing it. She said this in front of the whole class. And keep in mind, guys, I'm not sure if you ever had a moment similar to this, but that is one of the most humiliating things a person could go through. Being called out for something that wasn't necessarily their fault, and having people you don't even know hear that and see that. Just basically handed it in, and I was like, I just wasted 4 months. As I was leaving the classroom, I looked back one last time. She looked pissed off. She stared at me, and I was just like, you know what? Just take it. You took an L today. Today you took an L. You need to leave. Just go. I don't know what to do right now. It just felt like a huge mess in my opinion, which it was. As I was going back in the subway and like just staring out the window with people like living their own lives, thinking their own thoughts, I was just like, this day is a huge L, and I basically wasted 4 months for nothing. And I learned a lot about sacrifice and a lot about doing things out of your comfort zone, and how our journeys in life, regardless of what goal we might have, is not always going to be picture perfect. Always going to face some type of obstacle, hardship, or trial when you do have these types of challenges facing your way. However, to my surprise, even though I failed the final and that was like a good 35% of my exam, somehow, some way, passed the class. When I enrolled in university, then I realized that I actually did pass the class. And keep in mind, in your institutional university, once you enrolled, they just care if you passed or failed. They don't really care about the grade you got. Guys, to keep a long story short, I ended up getting the credit for that class, and I guess in a sense, all was well. However, lesson I really appreciated it, and it was one where I learned a lot from, and if I did not experience it, I would simply not be the person I would be today. With that being said, I want to thank you guys so much for the suggestion of this idea. I really appreciate my friend who personally messaged me and told me about this because, again, as I mentioned before, I really don't think the story as much as I should have. It was an important story, and it was one where I learned a lot from. And in the end of the day, to answer the title of this video, no, I did not fail my college class because of Islam. Rather, in fact, I thrived as a person and as a college student because of it. Thank you guys so much again, and have a great rest of your day, guys. Take care.